Hey, I'm Michael Dorinda,
And I'm Jake Bennett.
and welcome to episode 93 of the North Meets South web podcast.
Chicka Janet. 93, episode 93. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. It is Easter's Eve over here.
It
Uh-oh. And
is
I've got a little one
Easter,
up. Hold on.
Easter
Hold
Sunday.
on.
Oh,
Hold
no
on here.
chocolate, no bunny.
No bunny for you. All
Go
right,
to
I'll be
sleep
right
or the
back. One
bunny
second.
won't stop.
1 second.
Well, folks, we just started recording and there is a child looking for the Easter bunny in the middle of the night in the Bennett household. So apologies if you have tuned in live. If you are listening to the audio recording, you won't even hear any of this. I hope you are well, however you are celebrating Easter. I spent my morning digging out a fence post. It was hard work. 600 mil of concrete, about a foot in diameter. Very heavy and very deeply set into the ground. Are there Easter songs? Like there's Christmas carols, but are there Easter songs? Easter songs. Because he lives. I suppose they're mostly religious. Oh, there's hot cross buns. Hot cross buns. Hot cross buns. 1 a penny, 2 a penny. Hot cross buns.
I want to know how Hot Cross Buns is a Easter song.
I don't know why
Somebody explain this to
hot
me.
cross buns are only for Easter. Let's be fair. Like I would happily buy. Someone posted on Facebook. One of my friends said, finally eating hot cross buns on the right day. And I said, any day with a Y in it is the right day to eat hot cross buns. Why restrict yourself to Easter Sunday when you can have hot cross buns every day?
Anytime you like. That's right.
I mean, they come out as soon as, they put away, the day after Christmas, basically. They're on the shelves here in the shops. Start buying them. And then
I'm not sure if I know what hot cross buns are. I don't know. I mean, I've sing the song.
So do you have fruit bread? Like it's a yeasty wholemeal kind of,
had it
like
before.
It's a dark bread. They are. It's delicious. Can't believe it's not a thing.
I think
You're
I've
missing
had
out.
it.
My mum's like, I don't know why they're putting them out. It's just been Christmas and they're already putting out stuff for Easter. And I'm like, but okay, that's fine. She goes, I don't like them anyway. I said, what does it matter if they're putting them out the day after Christmas if you don't eat them anyway?
Dude, I'm going to have to get me some hot cross buns.
They're pretty easy.
Yeah,
to
we
make.
don't, like I've never really had these. I mean, like I don't know. Have you ever heard of like stolen bread? Stolen bread? Is that what it is? Stolen bread?
Authentic.
Yeah, stolen bread.
Stolen.
S-T-O-L.
German.
Stolen bread.
It's not Stalin
Yeah,
bread.
is that similar? Is that similar to hot cross buns? Not really.
It is a yeast bread that is baked with dry fruits, candied citrus peel, nuts, and spices. Maybe. Yeah, it'd be a similar.
That's probably the closest I've ever had. Stalin bread. And I used to have that every Christmas.
Yeah, maybe not.
No. All right. Well.
Anyway,
the list is growing longer of things I need to do when I come over to Australia. Every time we talk, it's like, hey man, when I get over to Australia, we're gonna have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
One of them I hear is going to McDonald's and getting a drink and then not getting a refill. I hear that's one of the things I need to do.
Hemphill, and Wathen. They give me crap about that all these years later.
What the heck?
Because
you don't get a free refill?
We don't need to stoke the obesity problem. Okay, you want another?
Dude,
you
it's
want
so
another
funny.
drink?
I remember
you just
when
go and buy another drink.
I remember when free refills were not a thing. I remember when that was not a deal, and then I remember when it became a deal. McDonald's was like the first one to do it, and being like, "Oh my gosh, free refills? You just get a refill for free? Like how in the world?" Yep.
They used to do it in Hungry Jack's, which is our version of Burger King, but it's just people take it for a ride. Yeah. I think it's very rare that you'll see. There's still a couple that still do it if you eat in, but no one, especially now, no one's eating in COVID times.
Right.
It's all delivery. So
you'd have to go up and ask, and they'd give you like a dirty look, and they'd be like, sigh loudly, and then they'd give you a refill.
I think the bigger crime here is the fact that our large is like your regular size over there.
Or like 8 ounce.
Yeah, you ask for a large fries over there, and you've got enough to feed a family over here.
Yep. 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 That's funny.
So
Yeah, dude, man, I've never gotten it, but there is a drink at Sonic which is called a Route 44, and it's a 44-ounce soda. Holy cow.
it's a lot of
That's a big
soda.
soda.
That's a
That's a big soda.
big soda
That's enough to feed a family right there.
in milliliters. What's that in real measurement? It's a liter, 1.3 liter. That is. So you can buy a
Oh my
1.25
word.
liter of drink, but that's the kind of thing that you would put in your fridge and you'd get like 5 servings out of it. That's outrageous.
They have even bigger ones, not at Sonic, but like at some gas stations, they have like even bigger than that. I've seen people that just they have these mugs they carry around. It's like literally, it's like they carry around like like a liter and a half of like soda. It's insane. It's insane.
Unreal, unreal. So what's
But
what's
hey,
new? What's for
speaking
new?
of weights and sizes, yeah. No, so what's new for me? I'll tell you. What's really bumming me out right now is that Wilbur Powery is no longer on my team.
I saw that. What's going on? Is he going to work where Yaz is? Is that what's happening?
Yes, yes, he is. And I told him, it's so funny. One day he messaged me. He's like, "Hey, dude, you got a second to talk?" I'm like, "Uh-oh." And that's all he said. He didn't say about whatever. He just said, "Hey, you have a second to talk." And I said, "This is what I said." I said, if you're going to work with Yaz, I'm going to puke." And he was like, "What?" Like so random because I had just seen like maybe 3 days ago, Yaz had posted like super excited to have some new Laravel devs joining the team, and I was like, "So help me if you're going to work with Yaz." And sure enough, he's like, "Actually, I am." I'm like, "Come on, man,
That's
you're
rough.
killing me here."
That's rough that he had already accepted the position and that and that Yaz had already announced that they were bringing on new people
I
before he told
know.
you that he was leaving.
Dude, it was a massive bummer. Massive bummer. But
That
honestly, man, it's a really so I totally understand it because it's a crazy good opportunity for him. Um he's going to be working with more devs than he was working with on us and our team, and they're all remote.
Yeah.
So it's not like he feels like he's the only remote, right? Like,
Right,
and we
because
really try to make
he's
their
not in the US, is he? He's
correct.
in Puerto Rico or something
He's
like
in
that.
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Sorry
Um,
about that, Wilbur.
no worries. No,
I'm sure
honestly,
there's like a thing,
it's
like
kind
if
of a
you mix up
joke.
Costa
It's a
Rica with
joke.
Puerto Rico and things like that, they just get mad.
It's a joke because we actually two other folks that are on our team who know Wilbur, who have been like on a lot of calls with Wilbur. They were talking about him on one of our live stream shows that we do for the entire company, and they said multiple times that he was from Puerto Rico. I want to ask what that is in a minute. But yeah, they were like, "Oh yeah, Wilbur from Puerto Rico." I'm like, he's not from Puerto Rico, guys. He's Costa Rica. He's actually he's Honduran. He's from Honduras, and then he moved to Costa Rica to study. Is that a Cadbury egg?
I won't focus. It's a Ferrero Rocher egg.
Even better. Even better.
Hazelnut.
So yeah. Oh, dang, there it is. I've never had one of those.
So good.
So he's going to work with Yaz and that team over there, and it's a really really great opportunity for him, and so I'm excited for him, and so he still might have some availability. I don't know. We'll see. He gave me like a month notice, so it's not like he was just like, "I'm gonna leave you guys high and dry." He's been really really
it's good.
awesome about it, and so he's been a really great member of the team. So now we're looking for the next member of the dev team. So
Nice.
it's been pretty
always,
good. I was asked.
It's always depends on how well you know your team and whether or not you're shocked when they say that they're going to leave. Because when Aaron said that he'd accepted a new position, like I kind of already, like, it wasn't a shock to me that he'd accepted a position. And so, you kind of feel bad because you put this team together and it's worked well and they're good people, but at the same time, there comes a point where if people are content, they're going to stay. But if they want to advance or they want to do something different, which is what he ended up doing, he accepted a position as a CTO. That was never going to happen where he was on my team. So, you feel kind of bad because you're breaking up the team and all of that. But at the same time, you feel pretty good as a people leader because you have had someone on your team that has progressed to where they feel like they can take the next step in their in their journey, in their career,
Yeah.
and so that kind of offsets it. And and then he left, and then I left anyway, so it didn't really matter to me too much.
Sure. Sure. And it's been good because yeah, that's true. You didn't just break up the team, you destroyed the team. You obliterated the team. Just both of you guys
Broken.
leaving. It's just like,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's all over.
There's only so many devs, Laravel devs in Australia. So I'm sure it's getting more and more popular though. I mean, that's the thing. Like I was listening to Mohammed Syed on the Laravel podcast, and we were just talking about, like, he's like, yeah, the most popular framework here is Laravel. I'm like, wow, that's cool. So I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's starting to become more of a thing around other places in the world. I don't know. I just had a guy contact me from Nepal, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I've worked for companies in Australia and in the U.S. and it looks like he's done actually quite a bit of work in Australia. I think you guys are a bit closer to his time zone than we are, but yeah, I think so. Wilbur was awesome, and he was like 1 hour difference from our time zone, which worked really well.
Mm.
But we were never able to get him up to the U.S. We could not get his visa approved.
Yeah.
With everything, I mean, we literally did everything we could possibly. We sent like letters. We, gave him anything that he would have possibly needed to go to the customs, I don't know what it is, consulate. Thank you, and get it approved, and they just never would do it. And so it was super frustrating because we really wanted to like get him up here and set him up, have him come up for a week or two or whatever.
Maybe to be easier now with the new president.
Yeah, no, that's definitely what it was. I mean, like that's for sure what it was. I mean, when he was hired, it was like 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was totally just during that time. It was like the whole, no Mexico border crossers, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Build the wall, exactly. And so they were denying everything.
You can have them on your payroll so long as they're not in the country.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. So he was hired as he was actually, because of that, we hired him as like a contractor. So basically he was like a full-time contractor. So the cool thing is, like, if he wanted to do any contract work for us, we already have all the channels set up. Like, like if I was like, hey, I have a couple things I want to, this is going to take a couple hours if you have any time. We already have all the channels set up for payment and for all that stuff and all that. So that's sort of nice too. And and he's said as much, like, hey, if you guys have a couple things you need done or whatever, you need a little bit of extra capacity. If you have stuff that's not an emergency, just shoot it over, and I'd be happy to work on it as I have time. So yeah. So that's kind of nice too. Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of like, that's what's going on here. Other news is that we finally launched our new phone system, and it's got an API, which has been really cool. So now we can make calls on behalf of our agents, which is nice. We can pause recording of phone calls. We can resume recording of phone calls. We can check how many phone calls they have in their queue. We can do all sorts of stuff with this API. So the API is great. Their UI is absolute hot garbage. It is freaking garbage. I can't even tell you enough how terrible it is.
Yeah.
And when you ask, like, hey, does it have the ability to do this? They're like, yeah, it does. Okay, I go, great. And so basically, once we got into it, though, it was like, yeah, this is horrible. This is really, really bad. And so since they had an API, we ended up building our own UI on top of their API, which their API works pretty reliably. UI is hot, steaming pile of trash. It's so bad. And so anyway, yeah, that's been interesting. That's been a sort of a journey trying to figure that all out. And so I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but that's been like pretty much all I've been doing for the last, feels like month.
Yeah.
It's just that. But Wilbur was a big part of building our custom UI for that. And that turned out really awesome. Really, really awesome. I think I actually sent you some screenshots for that. And you had some comments
components that you were sending through. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, basically what I sent you guys is what we ended up going with. And it's working amazingly, really, really well. So
nice. That's good.
Yeah, pretty stoked about that.
Now that I work for a voice provider, I can see why, like, it's hard because there's so many different ways to achieve the same thing. And I think we spoke about this when I started at my current gig, that when a phone call comes in, you can route it to an IVR, like an auto attendant, or you could send it to an extension directly, or you can send it to a ring group or whatever. Because there's all these different ways of achieving the same outcomes. Yeah. It's really hard because you want to have the flexibility to do it any way you want, which means that there's a lot of steps. Like there's a lot less affordances in, like, I want to send this number to this extension, and it's just like a one screen, one step thing. Like, what's the number? What's the extension? it's more like a build your own flowchart thing through all the different steps, which makes it kind of
Yeah.
tricky. So I think ours is really good considering that, there's not a nice way of doing it, but I did suggest maybe there's some like templated ways you could do it. Like, here is a form if you want to do this, and it just asks you for all the inputs, as opposed to saying like, go to this thing and then click here to create a new Y thing and then click through that. So we've got this idea of like stacked modals, to borrow a phrase from Jonathan Rennick, where
Yeah.
you could go
Interesting.
from like the point of entry is a number, so number routing, and you could say like, I want to send this to a IVR, and if you haven't created the IVR, you can then create the IVR, which pops up another modal on that, and then from that you can create an extension, and from that you could create a voicemail, and from that you could create a greeting for that voicemail. And so you can like come up the stack and then back down the stack, all in sort of one place. But it's yeah, I get why it's easy for it to just be a terrible user experience, because it's just
Yeah.
really hard to lay that up in a nice way. And
It
especially
is
like,
hard to predict like everything that's going to happen, but like it feels like there are some things that are like common sense.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? And
it's tricky
just
because a lot of people that have these phone systems that are like migrating to cloud hosted phone systems, they're coming from, Cisco call managers, and we've got a company here called Commander that do like, it's a big physical box that you run physical lines into, and then you pay a company to install it, and a consultant that will come in and sit down with you and flowchart everything, and then they will build it on your behalf. So going from like the phone system just works by itself, and if it doesn't, we call a person, to it's just a web app that you log into and do stuff. And so not a lot of people are necessarily technically capable of that, and they get scared
yeah.
off trying to do it themselves, especially when there's so many different options. It gets a bit overwhelming. So I get that for sure.
Yeah. So we have okay, tell me if this is difficult. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. This is how I would typically expect it to work, right? You call, hey, thanks for calling. If you know your party's extension, you can dial it at any time. Otherwise, please listen to the following options, right?
Mm-hmm.
Press 1 for this, press 2 for this, press 3 for this, or stay on the line to reach a customer service representative.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
And then if the company is closed, it just goes to like, hey, there's currently no agents available to take your phone call. Please leave a message. We'll get back with you as soon as we can, right?
Yeah.
That seems like it'd be relatively easy. Okay. So how about this? Like when you do that, if you dialed an extension that was incorrect, so let's say you dialed like 323,
Mm-hmm.
there is no extension 323. How difficult would it be to just say, you've entered an incorrect extension, please listen again, or like, and then like flip you back to the beginning? Like, is that possible in yours? Like, is that something that you could do? Does that seem like a common sense thing to do?
Common sense, yes. I'm sure that we do it, but I don't know off the top of my head. Like, I know that we have the ability, like there's a checkbox that says allow dialing extensions. And that way you just do it. But I don't know what happens if you dial an invalid one, whether it just plays the messages again or not.
Even if it did that, even if it just played the messages again, you'd be like, okay, that's acceptable. Like right now, ours, it's like if you dial the extension, but you never press the pound symbol,
just times out.
It just sits there.
Yeah.
Literally just sits there for like
and
2
waits.
minutes.
Yeah.
And waits. And then it doesn't redirect you back. It drops the call.
Yeah.
It just hangs up.
I know
like,
is tricky, because you need to instruct the phone system like what it's waiting for. Like, and it doesn't know in the context. Like, everything is just a whole bunch of switches, right? So it doesn't know in the context of you pushing 1, 2, 3 if that's IVR option 1, 2, 3, and you're still like, it doesn't know that there's 120, 1,234 options. Like, it could be waiting for you to push 4 and go 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't know that. It doesn't look ahead. So if it's expecting 1, 2, 3 and then pound, and you don't press pound, then I think probably the smarter option is to have that timeout and to just like loop back to the start of the auto attendant. But it depends on what the phone system is built on top of and whatever else. So
yeah, so it seems like when we were like, it seems like we're like it almost feels like we're their first client ever. Like we're asking them questions. They're like, that's a good question. we're gonna have to ask an engineer. I'm like,
Yeah.
seriously, people, like this
Yeah.
seems like the most common. Like I've called a million phone trees in my life, and like that's exactly what they say: dial
Mm.
an extension or listen to our menu options.
Could also come down to the size of the company. Like I know from being on both sides of the company I'm at now, being a customer and now being an employee, that there are certain things that sure they might be available in other phone systems, but in a business, like it may just be that you've gone to a company, maybe because they were cheaper and it looked like they had the options or whatever that you needed. But it could also be that they've never serviced a company as big as yours, where your needs are certainly different. Like when I was at my last job, we were asking for things that were technically possible for the company, but because their focus was predominantly around like business phones, not a contact center. Like a contact center is very different. A contact center with 100 people in it is very different to just a business with 100 people in it. And 100
100%
phone
it
lines.
is. Yes.
So, whilst it might seem like the requirements would be the same, if you've got 100 customers that are just 100 businesses with 100 staff, and you've got one customer that's a contact center with 100 staff, where are you spending your time?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, you're spending it on the business half, right?
You're
And
spending
so
it on the product that is the majority of your
yes,
customers.
right. And I think the problem is we have both. So we have a collection floor, which is like 60 people, and then
Hmm.
the rest of the company is like back office. So you
Yeah,
have like other people who need to get voicemails and need to see like if that agent isn't available and you transfer to their extension and they're not available, send it to their voicemail immediately.
yeah.
And they should have a personalized greeting. And this company specializes in the collection or like the call center portion of it.
Hmm.
So for them, it's like, well, why would you need a voicemail? Like we're all just call center agents. Like you just have a general voicemail inbox.
Yeah,
It's like, no, no,
yeah.
no. We need a single person to be assigned a single extension that has their
Uh-huh.
own voicemail box. And they're like, oh, well, we don't do that. It's like, what the
Yeah.
heck? We asked if you had voicemail, and you just assume, well, of course you have voicemails
There
for
was no probing
individuals. Why wouldn't you?
questions. Yeah, yeah.
Right, right. It's like, so anyway, yeah, we got ourselves into a bit of a pickle, but we fixed it ourselves.
That's
And
good.
so, yeah. And then porting of numbers. Holy crap, dude.
Number porting is a
That
dirty, dirty,
that
dirty
is a
business.
freaking disaster mess. Oh my gosh. They were like, "Yep, hey, we're gonna have them all ported on Tuesday, 10:30." Great. Like we don't have any idea. We're just like super naive and like, okay, I guess that's a possible thing. Like we have like 150 numbers we're porting, right? No, no. That was for one number. One
Hmm.
number was getting ported on that time and that date. And it was a person, apparently a new guy doing it. This is his first time. And so, needless to say, a week and a half later, we're still waiting on certain numbers to get ported. Like it's
Yeah,
just insanity. It is insanity. Here's what
yeah.
we had to do. Are you
Number
ready?
porting is no good.
Okay, here's what we had to do. There was one provider that could not port our numbers, and the rest of them we could all handle through online portal, right? We could just like go in and redirect them. So this one though could not do it. So what we had to do is we had to go in to where our fiber came in, and then where it went from fiber to Ethernet, and then from Ethernet to PRI lines and PRI to SIP lines, whatever. We had to unplug it so that it would fall back to our fallback number, which we set to be the inbound number of the other phone service. So we literally had to go in and unplug it, physically unplug it
Hmm.
so that it would redirect to the
Hmm.
backup number, because that's the only thing we could control with this provider.
Yeah,
Holy crap.
the
It
old
was just like held
PSTN.
together by duct tape.
Yeah,
It's insane.
the old PSTN sort of phone system was never built for this kind of stuff. But it is kind of gross. The whole like number porting thing is not like we accept your port. It's we didn't reject your port kind of thing. If we don't give you a rejection
Oh
within
my
within
gosh.
3 business days, then assume that it's going to go ahead. This is the same with like direct debit, like bank transfers and
Oh,
things like
sure,
that.
sure. Yeah.
The bank that you are taking money, like if you are my customer and I was debiting money from your account, the bank would not say yes, you can have this money. The bank would just not respond with a rejection within 3 days. So if you didn't get a rejected transfer within 3 business days, then you can assume that money is now yours, kind of thing.
Oh
So
my word.
yeah, number
Wow.
porting is horrible, and depending, because our main telco in Australia, their primary contact center is based in the Philippines, and last year when COVID hit, basically the entire of the Philippines shut down, right? So they had to then scramble to onshore a whole bunch of people, in Australia. and there was just a whole swathe of things that couldn't be done because their contact
Oh
center in
my
the Philippines was
gosh.
closed. So they couldn't do number
Yeah.
porting. They got backlogged by months. You know, a number port that normally takes sort of 7 to 10 business days then blew out. So, and then depending on the category of number, you know, if it's a group of 100 numbers, or if it's a different category of number, it can take 6 weeks, it can take 8 weeks. Some numbers, if they're complex services, like if they've got you know, services attached to it, line hunts and things like that, that like are physical line hunts built into the phone system, you
Oh
you you,
wow.
you just can't port them. So
Totally.
it's
Totally.
it's all like hosted, cloud hosted is amazing. And like modern PBX systems are amazing because they're all online based. If you want to move a number, you can move a number. Typically, what we would do is we would,
Correct. Yeah.
you know, when you purchase a line from us, you would get a number with it. And so what we would suggest is like take your current number, forward that to the new number, and then submit the number port. So when the number port
Right.
happens, then
Yeah.
the number port is set up on our side. So
Exactly. Yeah.
you know, that's
That's what we
that's
ended up
usually,
doing
yeah. And that's
with
usually the
everything. We
easiest way and
forwarded.
the most seamless way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, we forwarded everything, which they didn't suggest. We just ended up figuring it out. That's what we're gonna do.
Mm.
We forwarded everything, and then we're like, whenever they port, and we'll just call it good.
Yeah.
You know.
And the thing is, they say
So
like it'll be 10:30 on Tuesday, but the process might start 2 hours before that. So your phones might just not work for 2 hours until the port completes.
right.
So it's a
Exactly.
it's a gnarly business. It's a gnarly business, but
So
it's good fun.
yeah, for any of you out there dealing with phone number porting, I'm so sorry for you and for your loss and for your sanity.
But the
And
fact that they gave you an API that allows you to sort of, and the API makes it a lot more powerful because you can, within
for
your
sure it
CRM,
does.
for example, just say, I want to call this customer. And so you don't have to look at the number and then dial it in your phone and then misdial it. Oh, sorry, wrong number. You just like
Exactly.
click the button in your
Exactly right.
CRM.
Yes.
It's linked into like your logged in account. So, you know,
Yep.
Jake Bennett is extension 123. So when Jake Bennett is logged into the CRM and clicks call, then it fires off the call request and hits your handset and starts dialing. So
Exactly.
yeah, that
So
stuff's
there are
cool.
no handsets. It's all soft phones, which
All
is
soft
it's
phones, yeah.
whatever. That's nice. But the way they do it too is like each agent when they log in gets a session ID. And
Mhm.
so they have like a soft phone on their desktop, but there's no way for us to retrieve that session ID that's returned to them when they log in. So what we had to do is we had to create another login page for them in one of our apps that will allow them to put in their credentials, and then when it gets back that session, it
Mhm.
saves that session locally, but then it also pushes it up to one of our sort of like workers, which just kind of sits in the back. We just call it Lambda. It's just our Lambda. And basically, that is the thing that's responsible for pausing phone calls. So if they go into a field that's like where they would put a credit card number in, or where they'd put a bank number in, or whatever, whenever it goes into that field in our system of record, it sends a curl request to Lambda, and Lambda says, take the session that they got last time they logged in and go
Mhm.
pause their phone call. So
Nice.
each agent has their own session ID. And so then you have also like top level user IDs. So users are like admin users, and then agents are like people who are actually on the phone. So it's been really interesting. It's been like I said, their API is pretty dang solid. So that's made it nice. And that was one of the huge reasons why we did it. It allows our people to be able to dial phones much more accurately and much more quickly. So
Yeah.
yeah, pretty nice. Pretty nice.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. So hey man, what's going on with you? I was going to talk to you a little bit about Alpine and Tailwind and
Mm.
Vue today, but if you have anything else you want to talk about other than that stuff, hit me.
Yeah, I've been playing around a little bit with Alpine, not Alpine, with Tailwind this week and Livewire building a new landing page. So got to spin up a new
Yeah, it looked
Laravel
really
app
good.
and put that together. Just, you know, clicking components together and making up some content and things like that. So Tailwind UI has certainly made that pretty simple because it's just these are the things that I need and just figuring out what order to put them on the page and what reads well and things like that. So got to have a play around with that. Got to use a bit of Livewire just because there's a form on the page that sends off a contact request to our ticket system. So just using Livewire for that because
For sure.
it
Yeah.
was nice. And yeah, built myself a little. I shared some screenshots of it on Twitter, separate to work. Just building a little dashboard for my home solar. So just so I can see, you know, when it's generating and how much it's generating, and when I'm drawing from the grid, and when I'm just using the home battery and things like that. So that was a bit of fun. Just slapping together some Tailwind again, and
Those looked really nice. Yeah, those icons. Where'd you get those from?
Most of them are Heroicons, but there's a couple of
Really?
fun, awesome ones in there just because there was no, like Heroicons is kind of made for application UIs, so it doesn't
Sure.
have,
Yeah.
things that are not applications. So it was weird that it had a sun, but it didn't have like a power icon or one of those. I don't know. I don't remember which it was, but there was one that it just didn't have. So I had to use a couple of fun, awesome icons. The battery icon is not actually an icon. That's just a couple of divs all slapped together. Like,
Oh, really? Nice.
yeah,
You did like a little CSS battery, huh?
yeah, just a little CSS battery. So yeah,
Nice.
that was cool, just slapping that all together, and then got my I had some outdoor cameras put in, like surveillance cameras, so they just
Yeah.
slap that in there as well, so I can watch my driveway from that dashboard as well, which is
That's pretty
yeah,
handy.
it's just a fun little project that kept me up way too late during the week because that's the only time that you have time to do anything when you work full time and have kids is after the kids go to sleep, so between like
Yes,
8
indeed.
and 1.
Which is why we're recording this right now. It's
Yeah.
11:15 my time, and it is nap time for you guys. It works out pretty well.
Yep. Yeah, we've got
So when you do that layout, we're using Grid or Flexbox.
I just grid, yeah. Just because it makes it easy. Because I know that there's always going to be 8 tiles, and I want there to be 2 rows. On a desktop, I want there to be 2 rows of 4, and on a mobile, I want there to be, just 1 column, and on a sort of tablet, it's 4 rows of 2 columns. So it just makes it easy to do that. I suppose like Flexbox would be okay as well. Comes down to, you know, Grid just makes it a little bit easier to size them. If you use Flexbox, you kind of have to say they have to be fixed dimensions if you want them to all be the same. Whereas Grid, you just tell it how many rows and columns there are, and it'll just figure it out and make sure they're all the same width and height.
Totally. It's like with Grid. So I'm still trying to figure out like my heuristic for like when do I use Grid, when do I use Flexbox? I feel like I use Grid as like a higher level sort of layout deal, and then Flexbox is more like at the component level when I'm aligning items together. When I'm saying I want these two to be the same height, or I want these, well, not the same height. That's not right.
Like align center.
Yeah, align center, or align top or something like that, right?
Yep.
Or justify between, which is really nice. Like when you have like push them to either side, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So it's like Grid is more like, hey, here are a couple things I want to lay out. Or like if I have, a set of 6 features, and then I have inside of each one of those little things, I have like the little feature, whatever, would be probably aligned with Flexbox, but then all of them aligned together is going to be used with Grid. It's like with Tailwind UI recently, like in this most recent project I've been working on, I've used it more as a reference than as a guide, as a reference instead of like a as the library is intended to be used, which is to copy and paste out components, right? I've basically looked at a lot of the different pieces and sort of picked apart how it is that they're doing different things. So like when they have this one section where there's text on the left and then an image on the right. So it's almost like asking Steve, like, Steve, what would you do in this case? Like, how would you build this, right? Like, I'm always annoyed when I have something like that where I have like a half an image on the header and then you expand it out beyond like what would normally be a container size. And what happens at that point? Do you just have a cutoff image on the right or does it expand all the way? And for them, it's like it expands all the way. I'm like, that's great. How do you do that, right? And so they use absolute positioning in a decent amount of things, which I was actually like, oh man, like absolute positioning always feels so hacky to me, but not the way that they do it. The way that they do it, like it's in the standard flow at mobile size. And then when they want to bring it up to the header, they put it in an absolute positioning. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And so I've been doing that a bit lately, which has been really, really nice. I like how that feels. We're like on mobile, you have just text by itself and then the image underneath. And then when you get to desktop size, it's like I have a little more room, but I don't have enough room to fill the screen with the text. So I'll just push the text off to the left and then bring the image that previously was underneath it up to the right and just center, absolute position it there and then let it flow out to the right.
I do like the absolute positioning
really nice.
for that kind of stuff. I do find I shoot myself in the foot though, like because it doesn't quite work always. You go like top 0, bottom 0, right 0, whatever, or inset 0. I think makes
inset
it.
Y 0. I think puts it like right inside the top or
whatever. So there's that. But then I had like a scroll to top or back to top thing that I'm like, once you scroll past a certain point, display this, but have it like fixed in the bottom. but you want it to be fixed on the bottom of the viewport, not on the bottom of the page and things like that. So,
Yeah.
and then when you
Oh,
start
interesting. Yeah.
positioning things like that, the Z index gets out of whack. So yeah,
Yep.
you know, you actually have to say it's like something higher than the rest of it. Otherwise, it ends up going behind all the content and things like that.
Correct.
So when you start hacking
Correct.
around with things like that, you get all these gotchas. But yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. Three things with absolute positioning. Make sure that
You have a relative parent.
Yes, exactly. Make sure you have a relative parent. And then make sure that, if you're going to set a Z index, so like if you have something that comes later on in the flow and then you absolute position it over top of something that was earlier in the flow, it's definitely going to be over top of it. So you've got a Z index, those items that were previous, and those Z indexed items have to have a position of relative on them in order to have the Z index applied, or absolute, whatever.
Yeah.
But like my nav, for example, my nav was always up at the top, and then I'd have the text and then the image underneath. And when I absolute position that image, it clobbers the nav, or it goes over the top of it. So even though the nav itself isn't absolutely positioned, I have to put a relative position on it with the Z index in order to kind of put it over top of that image. Yeah, so it's been a little bit of an adventure, but I think a lot of things that like Tailwind UI does is it basically, as I look at the code, it gives me permission to do things that I didn't do before. Because as I look at like how it looks on the page, it looks amazing. It looks great. It works every time.
I figured that Adam has done all the research into making sure that it's like semantically sound and where it should be, and so I just trust that it's fine. Because we had a fixed. So if you scrolled past, you know, the hero image, the header becomes fixed and the footer becomes fixed. So it's got like a view pricing in the footer. So you've got these two things at the top and the bottom. But then we have a flyout menu. So if you hover over the nav, it brings out the menu. Now the menu sat on top of the header, but beneath the footer. So like mucking around with that. And then as you scroll down the page, we had some elements that were like absolutely positioned and rotated. And so these different elements, depending on where you'd scroll on the page, would like one would be behind the footer, one would be above the footer, and then
oh my gosh.
And it's like, and you're trying to play around with it. So you make one Z10 and one Z20, but that still doesn't work for some reason. But if you make it Z30, it's okay. And like just mucking around with all this kind of stuff. So
yeah,
gotta be careful when playing with Z indexes and you know, the absolute positioning and things like that. So I have like a loading indicator on this dashboard using just like wire::loading.delay. So if it takes more than 200 milliseconds, it'll pop up a little loading indicator just so they know it's doing something.
Nice.
And getting that static, I think I used position fixed just to get it to like stay in the top right corner. So, and it just like flashes anyway. So it's not there for that long because the API, the dashboard will hit the API that's on my Sonnen battery. So it's got its own little local API, which is much quicker than using the app, because the app is like phoning home to wherever their servers are, and so it's that round trip and it just takes forever to load, whereas the local API running on the battery on my local network responds in like 20 milliseconds. So it's just like, just hit that and display what we need to display. But that was nice, just building all of that. The whole dashboard is just a Livewire component, so I wrap the whole thing when I render it in a wire::poll, nice. And it would just like I think by default it's 5. I've got it set to 15 seconds. So by default, it would just poll and it will just go and refresh that component, which will go and make the API request, which will then update it. And it will just reactively update the whole thing for me and just re-render whatever I need on the page. So it was nice to do that. Cause like, I can't imagine doing all this stuff before, like where you would have to write your own jQuery to do your fetching, or even, you know, using something like Vue would be easy, but it's just another thing in the tool chain that for this quick one-page thing, I didn't want to bring in that. Whereas with Livewire, I could just write Blade and PHP and just get it to do its thing natively without having to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that brings up two things. So while you're talking about Livewire poll, so what Livewire poll does right in the background is it basically will allow all the components within that poll to is it how it works? No, I don't think it is how it works. Don't you have to put in a specific function that you're polling? Livewire::poll equals whatever?
No, it'll just.
Oh, it is equal, but then it's
the
second number of seconds. That's right. Yep. Okay. And so if you have nested components, it will refresh all of them.
Mm-hmm.
because you're refreshing the top level. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I remember I was looking for a quick way to build something, and I wanted to have like a countdown timer, right? That would say, here's how many seconds are left on this thing. And like every second it should refresh to see who has basically what it was is it was an auction. That's what it was. It was a live auction. So everybody needed to be able to bid live, and needed to be able to see the top bidder live, and you needed to be able to see how many seconds were left live, all of that. And so I used Livewire Poll for that. And that was a mistake.
Until you melted your server.
It almost did. I mean, we had to like literally 10 minutes before the thing, we were testing it and we're like, this is not going to work. So we literally shut the server down, ramped the RAM up to 32 gigs of RAM, and gave it like 6 more processors. And then we're like, okay, just consume the new value that I'm passing you in with Echo. There was no way to do that. Like you're basically just using that event to say, hey, Livewire, go do your thing again. And it was like, I don't want it to do that. That's the problem. I'm already sending the payload. All I'm sending you is literally a timestamp. That's it. That's all I need to send you. Or, hey, here's the new high bidder, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was not, this was not working correctly. But I don't know. That might be something I did PR probably before next Christmas, because it was a Christmas auction for our company. And like I said, it ended up working.
Now.
Wonderful.
Start on it now, so it's done in 9 months.
That was a super fun project too. I really enjoyed that. That was my first really deep dive into Livewire.
Can you believe we're already a quarter of the way through the year?
No, I don't want to hear that, man.
We're already 3 months down.
It's crazy. That is crazy, right? It is.
It's wild how much faster time seems to go now that I basically never leave my house.
Right.
Except for like dropping Eli off to childcare,
right?
and going grocery shopping, and I suppose to the gym. I just don't go anywhere, don't do anything. One day a week I go to the office, but that's about it. Like, and the gym, I on Thursday night I got to the gym just after 10 p.m. because that was just when I had time to go. I'm like, I can't skip today. I have to, because I don't know, Liv was not feeling well. She was like stomach thing or something, so she just screamed both at me and Ree in turn because she just didn't want to go to sleep for 2 hours, and then eventually got her to sleep because I'm like, well, I can't leave the house with the screaming baby. Number one, Eli could wake up, and then what's Ree gonna do? Number two, I can't leave Ree with a screaming baby by herself, right, and go to the gym.
If you still want to be married when you get home, you don't.
Yeah, so she did that, and then eventually we got her to sleep, and she slept through until about 3:30, and then she woke up and she did it again. Like, she was just awake for 2 hours, didn't want to go back to sleep, and like Rhea and I are both laying there dying, trying to stay awake to, you know, make sure that she was okay and that. And then eventually Rhea's like, it's your turn. Like, you figure out what to do.
Yeah, you got to do this.
Because normally it's
so you took her to the gym.
The second that I hand a crying Liv to Ree, she's just like, but not this. So I went, you know, check the nappy, is she too hot, too cold, all the stuff, and then I just put it down on the bed, like just on my bed. I'm like, I just need to put you down for a second, and she just stopped straight away, and she was like cooing and smiling and giggling. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, she just didn't want to be held. That's all it was. Sometimes she just doesn't want to be held, and she will scream blue bloody murder until she's put down.
Oh my word. Kids.
So, you know, she'll be upset, and I'll be like, okay, I'll just put you on your little play mat, and then she's fine. She's playing. She's sitting up now, like she can sit and like just jamming things in her mouth, and she's on solids, and can't believe she's 6 months old already. It's just wild, and it's that is crazy. In the last sort of 3 weeks since she hit 6 months, she's just like, she's sitting now. She's got 2 teeth through the bottom 2, just like her brother had the bottom 2 come through first. It's just unreal. And my sister was supposed to be here today, actually. She was supposed to fly down yesterday, and Brisbane, they had a community transmission case of COVID, which then, you know, this person, he went to have his test. He didn't wait for the negative result.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about this.
He didn't have his negative result. Something is ringing, and I can't stop it. Oh, actually, that's my sister calling me. Stop, decline.
Speak of the devil.
So yeah, she was supposed to be here, and then she is not because of this thing. And like, the COVID case went from Brisbane. They didn't wait for their negative results. So then they went to like the Gold Coast and like, or not the Gold Coast. They went like all over the Brisbane area. Like,
What in the world?
and then there was a separate case that they were linked to someone that was working in a quarantine hospital. And then they went down to Byron Bay, which is a tourist spot. And they must have gone to every single business in Byron Bay. And Byron Bay is close enough to where my sister lives that they had expanded. She was not in a restricted zone. But she was in an area of increased testing, which basically meant that, like, you know, be vigilant. They had to wear masks everywhere they're outside and things like that, just as a precaution. And my brother-in-law and my nephew both work in the hospital, so you know they're extra vigilant because if you're working in a hospital, you know, in medical, then you've got to be careful. And so we were like watching it because she got screwed out of coming to visit us last year this time for my grandma's birthday because COVID started this time last year. And so, you know, we were watching it and then the net widened and then it was like, you know, we weren't sure if she'd be able to get in and if she got here, would she have to quarantine? And we figured in the end that like she'd have to come and she would have to get tested on day one. And she couldn't go anywhere until she got a negative result. But then she didn't have to isolate, but she still had to get tested on days 5 and 12. But she was not going to be here. Like she was coming here on Saturday and she was going to be leaving on Friday. So she wasn't going to be here that long. And
right,
so
sure.
where she lives in northern New South Wales, she'd have to like go from New South Wales into Queensland, fly from Queensland to SA, and then do that in reverse to go home. So, you know, she'd be traversing the borders there, and then that gets tricky when the COVID stuff is murky. And then whilst she wouldn't have to isolate while she was here, she wouldn't be able to go to any events that had a COVID plan, which means that, you know, coming here for Easter, she wouldn't even be able to come. And then like technically we wouldn't be able to come because then we would be in the same house as her. And so so she had to cancel her flights.
Oh man, so twice in a row, 2 years in a row. Jeez.
2 years in a row around
That's
the same
rough.
time. We've pushed it back. We're gonna try again in June, and hopefully, you know, with the vaccine rolling out, it'll be a little bit easier to sort of get it done. Because yeah, we're all a bit miffed that she's
for sure, man.
Missed out
That's
again,
a huge
so.
bummer.
It's hard because we haven't seen her for since Christmas of 2019. We were there.
Jeez.
So
yeah,
it's hard. I mean, we don't, you know, we usually see it once every couple of years, but you know, we've had the opportunity just sort of taken from us.
Been screwed twice,
which is a bit annoying. So
yeah,
anyway.
Gee whiz. Sorry to hear that, man.
Anyway, I need to go and
okay. Well, hey,
sure
I was gonna say, cue this up for next time. I would love to talk about components. Next time, blade components, view components, live wire components. I know, I love blade components too.
Blade components and Alpine and live wire components. We can talk about all that stuff. I know Caleb is a busy boy, always fishing. He's got no time for anything, but I wonder if we could get him on and talk to him about components.
Oh man, that'd be super fun.
One thing that I find myself getting in trouble with is, and maybe I'll just leave this here and then we'll wrap it up. I have a form group component, and one of the attributes that I pass to it is a label. And so that is a blade component. But then I want to sometimes dynamically update that label using Alpine. But because the component is a blade component, I can't dynamically update that value with JavaScript because it has already been rendered by Blade. So what I ended up doing was using a watcher. So this is for a category. So if I choose a category from a drop-down, some of those categories may have a different label attached for a subsequent field. So it's like choose the category, and then it's like, it could be like artist, or it could be director, or it could be producer, depending on the category. And so I need to change that label. And so what I ended up doing is using a watcher for when the category changes. And then if I need to update the label, I would use like a document.get element by ID, and then I would target the ID inside that rendered blade component to then update the text content, I think is the HTML or the JavaScript thing for it. So that worked, and I kind of needed to ship this thing, so that's what I went with. But I wonder if there is a better way of doing it. And I think Caleb Porzio.
Caleb would be just the man to talk to about it.
To tell me about that.
All right, next episode, everybody tune in. This has been episode 93. Thanks so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. If you like the show, please rate it up in your podcatcher of choice. That'd be awesome. You can find show notes of this episode at north-south.audio/93 or catch up with us on Twitter at Jacob Bennett, at Michael Dorinda, or at North South Audio. Thanks so much, everybody, and we will see you in a couple weeks.
See you. Bye.
Bye.